Hey guys, welcome back to the MCU HQ, and this is going to be my spoiler discussion on Spider-Man No Way Home. I decided to wait until after the weekend to release this video, just because I figured better to give people a chance to see it through the weekend, because I know the opening nights were hectic, so I'll just wait, I'll go through the weekend, and then I'll do my spoiler discussion. And I wish a lot of people would have waited until after opening weekend to start dropping spoilers, but you know what? It is what it is. Not going to be a play-by-play of the movie. Just going to talk about a lot of the big things in the movie and then any other little things I want to talk about that I just couldn't mention in my non-spoiler review. And of course, I have to start out by talking about the fact that Tom Holland ain't the only Spider-Man in this movie. Tobey and Andrew are in this movie, and a lot of people thought they were just going to be cameos, they would swing into the final fight, it would be awesome, and then they would go back to their own universes, but no, they don't. It's a lot cooler than that. What happens is they are actually supporting characters in this movie. They actually have arcs. Their first scene, they come in when Peter has no hope, and he ultimately needs Spider-Man. The two of them come in, and before they even swing around, they help him solve the problem, right? They're there to help him to understand what he's going through after Aunt May died. And they talk with him, and then they have the science bros. The three of them are figuring out how they're going to cure all these villains, and they're having this great banter. And then that even extends, they have arts. Andrew gets to save MJ to redeem himself for not catching Gwen. Tobey gives Peter the talk about he can't kill Green Goblin, he has to cure him, because that's what they do. And at the end, he jumps in to stop the glider so Tom can't kill him. They are essential to the plot of this movie, and that's the best way to do it. But it is also worth mentioning that something this movie does really well is that if you take the other Spider-Men out of the movie is still amazing. All they do is boost it, and they add even more growth into the film. And something that someone pointed out is that Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man showing up first is really meaningful because Andrew Garfield was the Spider-Man who lost all hope after Gwen died. And at the moment that Tom Holland's Spider-Man needed hope, it was Andrew Garfield that came through the portal. That was awesome. And something this movie does super well is it's not like Endgame where the heroes come in as this huge climactic moment and it culminates the whole film and the entire MCU. It doesn't do that. What it does is, at the lowest low of the movie, right? It's not a hopeful moment when the Spider-Men come through. It's not an epic moment. It's at the lowest moment of the movie where Peter Parker has just lost Aunt May. He has been blamed for it publicly by J. Jonah Jameson, and Ned and MJ don't know where he is. Peter has no one. He is at the lowest low point you can go. And Ned is a goddamn sorcerer and accidentally makes a portal. And you see a Spider-Man through the portal. And at least, I know it took me a second, and I know you kind of feel the mood in the theater. It took a second. But you're going through the portal, and the guy turns towards the camera, and you're like, I don't think that's Tom Holland. And then he jumps through, and the whole crowd goes nuts. But what's even cooler is you see Andrew Garfield, Spider-Man, right there. But it still hasn't fully clicked yet that it's Andrew Garfield until the mask comes off. And that's the moment that the theater truly loses their minds. I've seen it twice now. First night, there were a couple hype gods in the back of the theater that got the entire auditorium riled up. Second time, full auditorium. 75% of the people were in Spider-Man costumes, but there were no cheers except for Tobey and Andrew. That's what got the cheers. For that second one. And of course my favorite thing about these three Spider-Men is just the banter they had between them and trying to talk about everything they have that's different on their worlds. Of course the whole discussion about how Tobey's webs work, so glad that was in there. I thought something that was funny was the villains they fought and how Tobey's like, I fought like a black alien goo, and then Tom's like, I fought an alien in space. And Tobey's like, can we talk about the fact you fought an alien in space? It was so cool. Just seeing them, just the constant back and forth. A nice little touch is how Andrew thought he was the loser of all the Spider-Men, and he hadn't done anything cool, and he couldn't save Gwen and all that, and then it was Tobey who reassured him he's not. He's like, let's go back a sec. you're not lame, you're amazing. And that in all this stuff going on, they're trying to get cures because they know the Sinister Five is coming and the whole multiverse is going to break apart, that Tobey took that moment to do the Spider-Man thing. He's like, we need to back up. You are not lame. You are amazing. Like, it's stuff like that that is just so awesome in this movie, that just captures the essence of Spider-Man so much, because that is something Spider-Man would do. If someone is making fun of themselves and bringing themselves down, Spider-Man's going to bring them up. And it was so cool to see Tobey do that for Andrew. But I think my absolute favorite conversation they have is after the Avengers bit, when they're going through which is Peter 1, 2, and 3, and Andrew's like, Peter 3, right? That was hilarious. And then after that, we get the scene I think everyone was most excited to see, which is all three Spider-Men web-swinging together. And granted, it's not through the city, it's around the Statue of Liberty, but it's just so cool to see all these moves. And this nice touch is when they all jump off the Statue of Liberty and dive, they all yell like, woohoo, because no matter what's going on, just the insanity of getting to jump off a building and then swing from webs is such a cool one, and all of them still get such a kick out of doing that, that everything is going to shit, but the moment they jump off the Statue of Liberty, they're still just so hyped about the fact that they get to have all these cool powers. Alright, now let's talk about some cool moments with Tobey and Andrew here. Andrew saving MJ. Come on. One of the best moments in the film. It's funny, I was watching it and Tom was right there. Like, his hand was right there. And I was like, Tom's actually going to get her? And then Goblin tackles him out of the way. And then Andrew jumps down. And it's so cool. He's so quick about it, too. There's no stalling. He gets in there, he grabs MJ, and he lands. And I think I actually probably did tear up. And I said aw audibly when MJ said she was okay and Andrew started crying because he finally redeemed himself. That was perfect. That was perfect. And Andrew Garfield's such a damn good actor. He went through so much emotion in 3 seconds. He went from really sad about losing Gwen to really happy that he was able to redeem himself. And then there was, oh my god, the moment the entire theater gasped. Let me tell you when the entire theater gasped. And that was the moment when, after Tobey stopped Tom from killing Green Goblin and Green Goblin stabbed Tobey, everyone in the theater was like, oh! I actually thought they were going to kill Tobey. I was like, do they have the balls to bring Tobey Maguire back and kill him off? Thankfully they didn't, and he has been stabbed before, so he's no stranger to being stabbed, which, to me, kind of my headcanon means Spider-Man 4 happened, actually, like, in that universe, because in the original storyboards for Spider-Man 4, he does get stabbed. The first time I was watching, I think I was too caught up in the excitement, but knowing everything that happened while I was watching it the second time, one scene that really, really hit me right in the feels is when Tobey and Otto reunite. And the first thing Otto says is, it's good to see you, dear boy. And then after Tobey responds, Otto says, you're all grown up, how are you? And it was, one, just so touching to see those two reunite. And also, I mean, the theme's playing, but also just because it's kind of talking to us, you know. I said it in my review of the Raimi movies, but I was only a few months old when Spider-Man came out, so for years it was like Tobey, so like I grew up with Tobey, right? So it's cool because I was not even a year old when the first one came out, and now I'm 20, and I heard Doc Ock say you're all grown up, and for a second I was like, yeah. I guess I am grown up, huh? But yeah, I really, that's all I had talked about for Tobey and Andrew. And I think my absolute favorite thing about it is that they were treated like characters. They weren't treated as just cheap fan service. They were brought in at a time that their presence would have been crucial to the story, at a time that Tom Holland needed it, and they actually had relevance not just to the emotional story of the film, but the physical story of the film, and they actually were crucial to the story. They were actually characters. They weren't just there. And I think oftentimes that's what separates this movie from a lot of movies that bank on fan service. Sequel trilogy is something that does this, but a lot of movies nowadays that bank on fan service forget the heart of the characters and all that. And that's what puts this movie above so many others, is that it brings back these characters we all know and love and uses them in the right way. Let's talk about a very good scene in this film. Not my absolute favorite. We'll get to my absolute favorite scene here in a little bit. glance at my notes. It's coming up soon, but one of the best scenes in the film, and I think the scene in the film that really took the movie from, yeah, it's good, to this is one of the best superhero movies, is Aunt May's death scene, and how incredibly well done it is, and how realistic it is. It doesn't feel stylized in any way, and I think this is something Jon Watts is really good at. He knows when to use music, but he also knows when to take music out. And Aunt May's death is one of those scenes. It is, like, Goblin blows everything up, he hits Aunt May with the glider, and he leaves. And there is no music at all. You just hear the fire going off, you kind of hear the noises in the background, and it's starting to rain, right? So you can hear that. It's more of just ambience. There is no... There's no music or nothing, and it puts you in the moment, in the horror of the moment. And Peter goes and finds Aunt May, and they both get up, and I did get spoiled for me that she dies. It was my own fault. Like, I'm not mad at anyone. It was my own fault that I saw that she dies. I went too far down a rabbit hole, I'll just say that. So I knew Aunt May was gonna die, and she got up, and I was like, so she doesn't die here. And, but she was still shaking, and you could tell she was in shock, and it hit me not long after that she wasn't going to make it out of the scene. And she's the one who delivers the great power, great responsibility line to Tom. And I'm surprised they actually just straight up used the great power, great responsibility line. It's like they knew fans wanted it so bad that they're like, we might as well do it. And Marissa Tomei nailed the crap out of that line. Could not have been delivered any better, honestly. And yeah, I never thought I would feel something for this Aunt May, but I did. I almost shed a tear when she died. My friend did straight up cry when she died. This movie did so much for the character of Aunt May that when she died, I actually could not believe it. I was like, they not only did they kill Aunt May, they made me really sad that they killed Aunt May. And this is the best example of Tom Holland's acting in this film, as Aunt May's death scene. He plays it off so unbelievably well. This scene and the scene after it, when Jameson's on the Jumbotron and he's just sitting there and he's crying in the rain. Fan-flippin-tastic. Just great work all around. And yeah, there's still no music there as she dies, and Peter's trying to get help and all that. And the moment the music kicks in is when she finally passes and Happy pulls up, and that's when it kicks in, and it's a sad music. And something I didn't really pay immediate attention to in the theater, but I knew it happened, but I didn't really register it until later, is that Tom has to flee. He doesn't get to say goodbye. He has to flee immediately because Department of Damage Control is hunting him down, and he gets shot, and that's the moment he has to run. And then right after that, he then hears a thing being broadcast, probably to the entire world, that it was his fault that Aunt May died. Like I said, I liked the film from the get-go, but I wasn't completely sold on it until the entire apartment sequence and Aunt May's death. And from there, it was one of the best MCU movies, the best Spider-Man movie, just from there on out. And speaking of the apartment, let us mention the apartment, because this whole sequence in the apartment of curing the villains is my favorite part of this entire movie. I don't get scared by Marvel movies, but this film, there were two instances I did. One of them was in the final battle, when we thought everything was over, and then we hear Green Goblin say, "Can Spider-Man come out to play?" and he flies it. But the other one was in the apartment when his Spidey sense went off, and he had to go figure out which villain was about to snap. That was absolutely terrifying, and it's a great moment of tension without needing action. That's something else this trilogy and Jon Watts did really well, is like the most tense moment in Spider-Man Homecoming is in the car, right? The most tense moment of Far From Home, okay, actually, you can't, Far From Home doesn't really count because of how Mysterio works as a villain. The most tense moments usually do rely more on when the illusion stuff is happening. But the most tense moment of No Way Home was in the apartment before the fight broke out, of just his Spidey sense going off, and as the audience, you know one of the villains is the problem, but you don't know which one, neither does Peter, and Peter can't make a big stink about it, or else everyone's gonna go nuts, because Sandman's gonna lose it, Goblin's gonna lose it, Electro's really gonna lose it, so you gotta be super calm with it. And that had me, it was chilling to watch that those few seconds. But the entire scene, the entire sequence in this apartment, from the moment they get there to the moment they leave, or the moment Green Goblin flies off or Aunt May dies, was the best sequence in this movie. And of course, that is because of the Green Goblin, who was better in this movie than he was in the original movie. In the original Spider-Man, he was a great villain. He was like so cool to watch on screen. As a kid, he was scary. But in this movie, he was sadistic and terrifying. And whenever he was in a scene, I feared for everyone else in the scene. And he went for kill shots on everyone in the movie. His whole motive was to rack up the body count. He killed Aunt May. He went for kill shots on the Spider-Men and MJ and like Ned, like everyone that was in a scene with him. If they were there, he was going to try to kill them. I noticed it the first time I noticed it. Second time I noticed it more, and I'm interested to see on the rewatch where the moment happens that Norman becomes the Green Goblin undercover. Because there's a line in kind of the lab in Happy's like closet where Otto says, "Are you excited to be whole again?" And I cannot for the life of me remember what Norman says, but the way he says it, he sounds like the Goblin. And I honestly wonder if at that moment he was just the Goblin undercover. Because there's a shift somewhere in there. And I want to go through our future rewatches and see if I'm right about that. Where the Goblin comes out and Norman goes away. And I think another scene that was absolutely chilling is when they're in the hallway fighting and Peter's punching Green Goblin, and as he punches him, Green Goblin just starts to laugh harder and harder. Like, he's enjoying this. And that entire fight in the apartment, this is the fight I really, really wanted to go in depth on in my non-spoiler review, but I couldn't, is the fight in the apartment where they're throwing each other through the walls. And I was not a fan of the action Homecoming or Far From Home. But in this movie, holy crap, you could feel those hits. Like, when they were flying through the floor, you could feel that. Those punches, you could feel them. My favorite move of the whole fight is when Peter is on his back and Green Goblin's on top of him. Peter webs up, flips over, then webs back down and slams him through the floor. That was lit. And the way his costume, we finally got the perfect Green Goblin costume, in my opinion. I mean, first off, getting the mask off Willem Dafoe. Perfect choice. It makes him more terrifying. And then he had the Goblin suit under it, and he got the purple cloak because he was wearing a purple hoodie, and in the fight it got tattered, and so it was just this like purple rags over him, and he still had the hood. Perfect, the perfect Green Goblin costume. I just wish we got a clear shot of it. But yes, man, Willem Dafoe. I mean, was there any doubt that he would be the best in this movie? He was amazing. Like, wow. He really gave it his all. I mean, everyone in this movie, no one phoned it in. Toby, Andrew, Alfred Molina, Jamie Foxx, Willem Dafoe, none of them phoned it in. They all brought their A game to this script. But Willem Dafoe especially, like, everyone is just talking about how perfect Green Goblin was. And Willem Dafoe did absolutely amazing. And he did his own stunts for it. So, badass. And Doc Ock, of course, it's so cool to see Doc Ock again. And this is the villain I was mainly alluding to when they said they don't forget arcs. It was Doc Ock and Sandman, because Doc Ock, the arms are controlling him, but then once they put the inhibitor chip in, Doc Ock's a good guy throughout the rest of the movie. They don't forget Doc Ock's arc. The arms, you know, when Peter controls the arms, Doc Ock he's still Doc Ock because he's still evil at that point, but he's still like Mr. Nice Guy. Like, he's not nuts, right? He's kind of the nice villain, and then they put the little thing on to hold the inhibitor chip, and he goes right back to being good, and there's no character regression or anything. He's not just bad again. And the moment they get that chip back in, he's a good guy again. He saves them in the final battle. Him giving Tom the Iron Spider back to like make the Yellow Spider was such a cool moment. That was a very well-earned moment, I think, in the movie. I don't like the Stark Tech. I was happy when the Iron Spider got torn to shreds, but seeing him get that Yellow Spider just felt so earned that I couldn't even bring myself to be upset about it. I feel like there's so much this movie did right in terms of character. Same with Sandman. Sandman comes into the movie as a hero, and he blocks Electro to help save Peter, then helps Peter take down Electro. And the only reason Sandman becomes hostile is because he thinks that Peter's gonna kill him also. And then Sandman's goal is never to destroy Spider-Man or that. Sandman wants to go home, and once the situation gets out of hand, he's like, I'm out of here, I'm gonna go get that box. That's Sandman's whole goal. He has no vendetta against Spider-Man because he's a good guy, ultimately. He's not a bad dude by the end of Spider-Man 3, and he has mad respect for Spider-Man. So his whole thing in that final fight is just to get the box. But yeah, Sandman and Lizard didn't need to be there, especially Lizard. I can understand Sandman being there because he kind of helped for the exposition of it all and explaining Goblin's situation, Doc Ock's situation. Lizard, why was he in this movie? Besides to just toss another villain in there, because he really didn't do anything. But I will say his coolest moment is in the apartment fight when he jumped off the roof and him and Peter were like tumbling down the apartment. That was cool. But if I could have cut one thing out of this movie, it would be Lizard. I'd just go back and I'd just remove Lizard from the movie and nothing would change. I do want to talk about Electro, because Electro is a big plot hole in this movie, because, as they say, people who know he's Spider-Man come through the portal, but Electro never figured out that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, so I don't understand how he came through the portal. He figured out that Peter was Spider-Man when he was there, but he didn't figure it out in his own world, so he shouldn't have been able to come through. And that's a plot hole I feel like the writers and John Watts are going to be answering until the day they die, is trying to explain away the Electro plot hole in this movie. There is a plot hole with another character, but we'll get to them when we talk about the end credits. So yeah, in terms of villains and heroes, that's really all I had. The last character-related thing I had is that Daredevil is in the MCU, baby! Daredevil is here. Matt Murdock gets one scene in the movie, but you know what? I don't care. It's enough for me. That's another scene the audience my first night went nuts, and I could hear the audience like just kind of like silently, or not silently, they were chatting about it, but there's a lot of, oh my god, that's Daredevil, the second night I saw it. It's no coincidence that we get Kingpin Wednesday and Daredevil on Thursday, or I guess Matt Murdock on Thursday. Everyone says they time the episodes out to not interfere with Book of Boba Fett, but I think Marvel timed the episodes out so that we would get Kingpin and Matt Murdock back to back with each other. Alright, let's talk about what I think might be the best ending to any comic book movie, and that is the ending of this movie is exactly what I wanted it to be. I've even said, like, my perfect ending to this movie is he goes to tell MJ, like, introduce himself and say he's Spider-Man, but he doesn't because he doesn't want to put her in harm's way, and it ends with him swinging through New York. Well, they read my damn mind, because that is exactly how this movie ends. Everyone forgets Peter Spider-Man, and it's the sacrifice he has to make, right? It's the Spider-Man thing to do. Doctor Strange even says, everyone in the world is gonna forget you. They're gonna forget you're Spider-Man, they're basically gonna forget you, you're gonna be like a nobody. And he says, do it. He says, do it. And Doctor Strange does it. And there's this little look, this is another thing. This is why I wanted to see it twice before I talked about spoilers, because there's so much stuff I picked up on the second time. Doctor Strange's last look to Peter, when Peter's saying goodbye to Ned and MJ, he gives one look to Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange kind of gives him the little nod there of... And there's just so much in there. You can tell he's like saying goodbye and fun times and all that, and he hopes everything goes well, and you can just sense that in this little nod Doctor Strange gives Peter as he casts the spell. It's gonna change everything. And that goodbye to Ned and MJ was heartbreaking. I teared up at that scene. I didn't shed any actual tears, but my eyes were glassy. That's for damn sure. And just the way he says he's gonna find MJ, and she said, I'll figure out that you're Peter, because I have before, and the hug they do, and the goodbye to Ned, and it's tears both in the movie and in the audience, and I just love how they took it seriously. They didn't try to plug a joke or anything. They went for it. They understood the characters so well, and they understood the stakes of this movie and what needed to be done. And they knew that writing some stupid joke or something would completely ruin the entire build-up to the ending of this movie. And they took it seriously. And that goodbye is one of the best scenes in the movie. The entire ending after the fight ends is one of the best sequences of this movie. And seeing how it all goes in the multiverse, like, seals itself back up, and you see all the villains go away, and Toby and Andrew do the little spider sign to each other, and they go away. And then the kiss between Peter and MJ before Peter has to leave and get out of there, just leaving MJ and Ned and Doctor Strange there, and no one's going to remember who he is, was such beautiful writing. But it wasn't even... It gets better, though, because Peter goes to the cafe MJ works at, and he has the script, and he's going to tell her all these stuff and introduce himself and talk about all this stuff, and he ends up ditching the script And he gets his coffee and he sees MJ and Ned all happy about going to MIT. And he just stands there trying to decide if he wants to say anything. I feel like I'm going to cry just talking about it. He's standing there seeing if there's any... MJ asks if there's anything else he wants to say. And he just folds the script up, puts it in his pocket, and he says he's good. And he leaves the cafe, and that's it. Not going to see Peter and Ned again. I mean, we might see them in the next trilogy, but if we do, it's going to be so different because all that build-up there is, it's the same thing as Gamora dying. When people say they undid Gamora's death, and I say, no, they didn't, because we lose the character development. It's the same way. Even if we see MJ and Ned again, everything we've had with them through the trilogy is completely gone. And I think the ending, it just gets better and better as it goes, frankly. Because after that, you get Peter going to Aunt May's grave, and he puts the flowers on it, and Happy walks up. And Happy introduces himself, because Peter doesn't know who Happy doesn't know who Peter is anymore. And they just say they met him through Spider-Man, because they remember Spider-Man, but they don't remember Peter. And then we get, the apartment, and he's in his apartment. Can you guys hear it in my voice? Like, I am about to cry just talking about how beautiful the ending to this movie is. And he does. He's in his own apartment, and he sets up, and he has the Palpatine figure, which I saw a tweet saying that No Way Home had more meaning to Palpatine than Rise of Skywalker did. Because Ned and Peter's first scene in the MCU is Ned asking Peter to build the Death Star with him. And they don't remember anymore, but Peter has Palpatine on his desk. And he also has the coffee cup that he got from MJ. It says, "We're happy to serve you." And he kept the coffee cup as his little thing that he kept from MJ. And he has the, it went from MCU Spider-Man to the Spider-Man. Like, Tom Holland became the definitive Spider-Man coming out of this movie that I, now can no longer see someone replacing him. And it's great. He has the, police dispatch thing on his phone. And you see in the foreground there's a sewing machine with fabric, and he's making an actual suit. He doesn't get $1 million suits anymore. He gets fabric from a store and a sewing machine. And he jumps out the window, and we get one last scene swinging through New York. He's in a classic red and blue suit. It is classic Spider-Man, swinging through, his theme blasts in, and he jumps towards the screen, and that's how it ends. And it sets up the perfect Spider-Man 4. He ends the movie with absolutely nothing left. And no Ned, no MJ, no Aunt May, no Happy, nothing. No Avengers, it's just him. And I really hope that Marvel does not try to force him back into the Avengers, or if they do, don't try to give him Stark Tech or enhance him or anything, just let him be Spider-Man, because they put him in the perfect place at the end of this movie, and I want him to stay there. It is on track to be, for the next trilogy, to be the best Spider-Man trilogy ever. And I hope they don't do anything to take the fact that it probably could be. It's funny, I texted my friend last night, and I was like, this trilogy really has just been one long origin story, right? Because it starts out, he is Spider-Man technically, but he's trying to be like an Avenger and be this much cooler hero, and I joked in my review that it made Homecoming and Far From Home worse, but really it made them better because they did this thing where they made it seem like there's no way that this whole trilogy was planned out this perfectly. Where they did this thing where they made it seem like they had every installment of this planned out so perfectly. And it honestly, I do think it elevates Homecoming a bit more, and Far From Home especially, where you can kind of see these threads that they address in No Way Home, and it makes it a coherent trilogy, and it's this origin trilogy. And we can call him Spider-Man throughout the movies, but it's the end of No Way Home, those last 10 minutes of the movie I just spent way too long going over, where he goes from just, yeah, sure, he's Spider-Man, to he is the definitive Spider-Man on film, and his origin is complete. It was this 17, 18, 19, 20, a 5-year origin story to, I guess if you include Civil War, it's a 6-year origin story they told with Spider-Man. And now he went in as a boy, and he came out as a man at the end of this movie. And it's funny because 2 weeks ago I never would have said this, but I cannot wait for more Spider-Man. All right, let's stop talking about the ending of the movie here. Let's talk about the post-credit scene. The first one, the Doctor Strange trailer. If I talk about that, I'll talk about it separately. But the Venom post-credit scene pissed me off because I was all excited to see Venom in the MCU after Let There Be Carnage. Insanely disappointing movie, by the way. But I was all excited to see Venom in the MCU. Instead, he goes away immediately after a joke. He's gone. But what we see is a little speck of the symbiote. Little speck of the symbiote is still there, and it starts to crawl, and they set up in this next trilogy, we will get the Black Suit arc, and hopefully it is done justice this time. Hopefully they do it right. Venom is also a plot hole. I want to talk about Venom because Venom also didn't know Peter was Spider-Man. The one way we can explain it away is that the Let There Be Carnage post-credit scene did explain the symbiote hive mind that travels across dimensions. So Venom in the Raimiverse would have known Peter was Spider-Man, so therefore the hive mind would know, so it would pull Eddie Brock in. That's the only explanation I can think of, but what I really think happened is that the writers did not plan on putting Venom in, and Sony told them to, so they just had to pull something out of their ass to get Venom into the MCU. And how did the symbiote stay behind? Because the symbiote isn't native to this universe. The only explanation I can think of for that is that if it spawned off Venom, it did technically spawn in the MCU. So Venom's not from the MCU, but this little Venom offspring is from the MCU. I guess that's the one way we could explain that away. Alright, well there you guys go. That's really everything I want to talk about in my spoiler review for Spider-Man No Way Home. So, are there any big things I didn't touch on that you think I should have touched on? Let me know. Feel free to talk any spoilers just in the comments of this video. I absolutely adored this movie. John Watts and everyone pulled it off to perfection. I think it's the best Spider-Man movie of all time, one of the best MCU movies of all time, certainly a top 3. And yeah, I just can't wait to see more Spider-Man. I just cannot wait to see more Spider-Man. But yeah, what did you guys think of the movie? Feel free to discuss spoilers, my review, anything I should have touched on, let me know. Anything else you want to say, throw it down below. Leave a like on this video, subscribe, click on the bell icon to receive all notifications from the MCU HQ. That's going to be it. Have a great day, guys.